the book club. We do a daily live stream every day. And today we are reading chapter 13, The Brain, a broadcasting and receiving station for thought, the 12th step to riches. The 12th step to riches. This is chapter 13 of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, endorsed by Andrew Carnegie. In a study by the author with Dr. Alexander Graham Bell and Dr. Elmer R. Gates, it was concluded that every human brain is both a broadcasting and receiving station for the vibration of thought. Through the medium of the ether, in a fashion similar to that employed by the basic principle of radio and other wireless communication, every human brain is capable of picking up vibrations of thought released by other brains. Excuse me. In connection with the above statement, compare and consider the description of creative imagination as outlined in Chapter 6 on imagination. The creative imagination, cheers. The creative imagination is the receiving set of the brain, which receives thoughts released by the brains of others. It is the agency of communication between one's conscious or reasoning mind and the four sources from which one may receive thought stimuli. When stimulated or stepped up to a higher rate of vibration, the mind becomes more receptive to the vibration of thought that reaches it through the ether from outside sources. This stepping up process takes place through the positive emotions or the negative emotions, either or, okay? Through the emotions, the vibrations of thought may be increased. Vibrations of an exceedingly high rate are the only vibrations picked up and carried by the ether, are the only ones carried by the ether from one brain to another. Vibrations of an exceedingly high rate are the only vibrations picked up and carried by the ether from one brain to another. Thought is energy traveling at an exceedingly high rate of vibration. Thought, which has been modified or stepped up by any of the major emotions, vibrates, or by any of the major emotions, right? Thought, which has been modified or stepped up by any of the major emotions, vibrates at a much higher rate than ordinary thought. It is this type of thought that passes from one brain to another through the broadcasting machinery of the human brain. Hey, what up, Magic Taco? What's up, Adrian? What's up, Lindsay? Appreciate y'all. Likes and subscribes help my community grow. This is a book club reading chapter 13, The Brain. As far as intensity and driving force are concerned, the emotion of sex stands at the head of the list of human emotions. A brain stimulated by the emotions of sex vibrates at a much more rapid rate than it does when that emotion is quiescent or absent. The result of sex transmutation is the increase of the rate of vibration of thoughts to such a pitch that the creative imagination becomes highly receptive to ideas it picks up from the ether. When the brain is vibrating at a rapid rate, it not only attracts thoughts and ideas released by other brains, it also gives one's own thoughts the feeling that is essential for those thoughts to be picked up and acted upon by the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the sending station of the brain through which vibration of thought are broadcast. The creative imagination is the receiving set through which the vibrations of thought are picked up from the ether. We are not here. We are not. We are here. Along with these important factors of the subconscious mind and the creative imagination, consider now the principle of autosuggestion. The medium by which you may put into operation your broadcasting station. Through the instructions described in Chapter 4, you were definitely informed of the method by which desire may be transmuted into its monetary equivalent. Operation of your mental broadcasting station is a comparatively simple procedure. You have but three principles to bear in mind and to apply. When you wish to see your broadcasting station, the subconscious mind, creative imagination, and autosuggestion, the stimuli through which you put these three principles into action have been described. The procedure begins with desire. So that's really it. Don't do things that are unnecessary. The greatest forces are intangible. The Depression of the 1930s brought the world to a very borderline of understanding intangible and unseen forces. The Depression of the 1930s brought the world to the very borderline of understanding intangible and unseen forces. Through the ages that have passed, people have depended too much upon their physical senses and have limited their knowledge to physical things that they could see, touch, weigh, and measure. We are now entering the most marvelous of all ages, an age that will teach us something of the intangible forces of the world about us. Perhaps we shall learn as we pass this age that the other self is more powerful than the physical self, and we see when we look into a mirror. Perhaps we shall learn as we pass through this age that the other self is more powerful than the physical self we see when we look into a mirror. Makes sense? Sometimes we speak lightly. Sometimes we speak lightly of the intangibles, the things we cannot perceive through any of our five senses, but we should never forget that we are all controlled by unseen and intangible forces. The whole of humankind has not the power to cope with or control the intangible forces wrapped up in the rolling waves of the oceans. The human mind does not have the capacity to understand the intangible forces of gravity, which keeps the little earth suspended in midair and keeps us from falling from it, much less the power to control that force. All of us are entirely subservient to the intangible force which comes with a thunderstorm, and we are just as helpless in the presence of the intangible force of electricity. Indeed, many of us do not even know what electricity is, where it comes from, or what its purpose is. Nor is this by any means the end of our ignorance and common connection with things unseen and intangible. We do not understand the intangible force and intelligence wrapped up in the soil of the earth, the force which provides us with every morsel of food we eat, every article of clothing we wear, and every coin we carry in our pockets. The dramatic story of the brain. Last but not least, with all our boasted culture and education, we understand little or nothing of the intangible force, the greatest of all the intangibles of thought. We know but little concerning the physical brain and its vast network of intricate machinery through which the power of thought is translated into its material equivalent. However, we are now entering an age which shall yield enlightenment on the subject. Already scientists have begun to return their attention to the study of this stupendous thing called a brain. While they are still in the kindergarten stage of their studies, they have uncovered enough to know what the central switchboard of the human brain, the number of lines which connect each brain cell with another, figures equals the figure 1 followed by 15 million zeros. The figure is so stupendous, said Dr. C. Judson Herrick of the University of Chicago, that astronomical figures dealing with hundreds of millions of light years become insignificant by comparison. It has been determined that there are from 10 billion to 14 billion nerve cells in the human cerebral cortex, and we know that these are arranged in definite methods. Know that these are arranged in definite patterns. These arrangements are not haphazard. They are orderly, recently developed methods of they are orderly, recently developed methods of the arrangements are not haphazard. They are orderly, recently developed methods of electrophysiology draw off action currents from very precisely located cells or fibers with microelectrodes, amplify them, and record potential differences to a million awesome years. And appreciate you for messaging that, to be fair. It is inconceivable that such a network of intricate machinery should be in existence for the sole purpose of carrying on the physical functions incidental to growth and maintenance of the physical body. It is not likely that the same system which gives billions of brain cells the media for communication one with another provides also the means of communication with other intangible forces. In the late 1930s, the New York Times published an editorial showing In the late 1930s, the New York Times published an editorial showing that at least one great university and one intelligent investigator in the field of mental phenomena were carrying out organized research through which conclusions had been reached that parallel many of those described in this and the following chapter. The editorial briefly analyzed the work carried out by Dr. Rhyme and R-H-I-M, though, right? Analyzed with the work carried out by Dr. The editorial. In the late 1930s, the New York Times published an editorial showing that at least one great university and one intelligent investigator in the field of mental phenomena were carrying out organized research through which conclusions had been reached that parallel many of those described in this and the following chapter. The editorial briefly analyzed the work carried out by Dr. Ryan and his associates at Duke University as follows. What is telepathy? A month ago, we cited on this page some of the remarkable results achieved by Professor Ryan and his associates in Duke University for far from more than 100,000 tests to determine the existence of telepathy and clairvoyance. These results were summarized in the first of 2 articles in Harper's Magazine. In the second that has now appeared, the author E.H. Wright attempts to summarize what has been learned or what it seems reasonable to infer regarding the exact nature of these extrasensory modes of perception. The actual existence of telepathy and clairvoyance now seems to some scientists enormously probable as the result of Ryan's experiments. Various participants were asked to name as many cards in the special pack as they could without looking at them and without regularly various participants were asked to name as many cards in the special pack as they could without looking at them and without regularly name about a score of men and women were discovered who could regularly name so many of the cards correctly that there was not one chance in many million of their having done their feats by luck or accident. But how did they do them? These powers, assuming that they exist, do not seem to be sensory. There is no known organ for them. The experiments worked just as well at distances of several hundred miles as they did in the same room. These facts also dispose Mr. Wright's opinion of the attempt to explain telepathy and clairvoyance. Ryan discovered that a narcotic will invariably telepathy and clairvoyance do not decline inversely as the square of distance traveled. Interesting. So when driving, one should always have their listening to the podcast. Various recipients were asked to name as many cards in a special pack as they could without looking at them and without other sensory access to them. About a score of men and women who were discovered who could regularly name so many of the cards correctly that there was no one chance in many million of their having done their feats by luck or accident. But how did they do them? These powers, assuming that they exist, do not seem to be sensory. There is no known organ for them. The experiments worked just as well at distances of several hundred miles as they did in the same room. These facts also dispose in holy shit. Baby scared me the fuck out. These facts also dispose, in Mr. Wright's opinion, of the attempts. There is no known. Okay, but how do they do them? These powers, assuming that they exist, do not seem to be sensory. There is no known organ for them. The experiments worked just as well at distances of several hundred miles as they did in the same room. These facts also dispose, in Mr. Wright's opinion, of the attempt to explain telepathy or clairvoyance through any physical theory of radiation. All known forms of radiant energy decline inversely as the square of the distance traversed. Telepathy and clairvoyance do not, but they do vary through physical causes as our other mental powers do. Contrary to widespread opinion, they do not approve when the percipient is asleep or half asleep, but on the contrary, when he is most wide awake and alert. Ryan discovered that a narcotic will invariably lower a percipient's score, while a stimulus will always send it higher. The most reliable performer apparently cannot make a good score unless he tries to do his best. Nice. Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And if you subscribe, you can always join us on the next live as well. We're going to be reading every single day for at least 2 years. One conclusion that Wright draws with some confidence is that telepathy and clairvoyance are really one and the same gift. That is, the faculty that sees a card face down on a table seems to be exactly the same one that reads a thought residing only in another mind. There are several grounds of believing for believing this. So far, for example, the two gifts have been found in every person who enjoys either of them. In everyone so far, the two have been of equal vigor almost exactly. Screens, walls, distances have no effect at all on either. Wright advances from his conclusion to express what he puts forward as no more than the mere hunch that other extrasensory experiences, prophetic dreams, promotions of disaster, and no, Wright advances from this conclusion to express what he puts forward as no more than the mere hunch that other extrasensory experiences, prophetic dreams, premonitions of disaster, and the like may also prove to be part of the same faculty. The reader is not asked to accept any of these conclusions unless he finds it necessary, but the evidence that Ryan has piled up must remain impressive. Hey, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you again, by the way. In view of Dr. Ryan's announcement in connection with the conditions under which the mind responds to what he terms extrasensory modes of perception, I now feel privileged to add to his testimony. My associates and I have discovered what we believe to be the ideal conditions under which the mind can be stimulated on that sixth sense described in the next chapter can be made no function in a practical way. Appreciate y'all. The condition to which I refer consists of the conditions to which I refer consist of a close working alliance between myself and two members of my staff. Through experimentation and practice, we have discovered how to stimulate our minds by applying the principle used in connection with the invisible counselors described in the next chapter. In doing so, we can, by a process of blending our three minds into one, find the solution to a great variety of personal problems submitted by our clients. Hey, thanks for liking and subscribing. The procedure is very simple. We sit down at a conference table, clearly state the nature of the problem under consideration, and then begin discussing it. Each contributes whatever thoughts may occur. The marriage thing about this method of mind stimulation is that it plans each participant to a. The strange thing about this method of mind stimulation is that it places every participant in communication with unknown sources of knowledge definitely outside his own experience. If you understand the principle had described in Chapter 10 on the mastermind, you, of course, recognize the roundtable procedure described here as beginning a practical application of the mastermind. The procedure is very simple. We sit down at a conference tables, clearly state the nature of the problem under consideration, and then begin discussing it. Each contributes whatever thoughts may occur. The strange thing about this method of mind stimulation is that it places each participant in communication with the unknown sources of knowledge definitely outside his own experience. If you understand the principle described in Chapter 10 on the mastermind, you of course recognize the roundtable procedure described here as being a practical application of the mastermind. Last paragraph. This method of mind stimulation through harmonious discussion of definite subjects between three people illustrates the simplest and most practical use of the mastermind. By adopting and following a similar plan, any student of the philosophy may come into possession of the famous Carnegie formula, briefly described in the author's preface. If it means nothing to you at this time, mark this page and read it again after you have finished the last chapter. If it means nothing to you at this time, mark this page and read it again after you have finished. All right. Well, that was a great book as well, or a great chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're watching this on a replay, just like and subscribe so you can join us live on one of the book club readings, which we do every single day. Peace. Hope you have a good day, a better week, and a best